Hi class, this is your take home for your second class of the semester on personality. The first thing we talked about was having you identify what your dominant response was. That is the personality trait, and there may be several, where you scored particularly high. What you needed to know, and the reason why you care about your dominant response, is this was attempting to help you build awareness about when you might behave in a way that's less adaptive. So you might behave in a particularly maladaptive way when your personality, your dominant response, is a poor fit to the situation, and you also feel stressed, and that situation doesn't have very strong norms. So for example, you may be a raging extrovert, but in a theater, you're probably not going to talk incessantly. I mean, maybe you will, but people will try to shush you. And you'll know that talking in that context is bad. But in more of a weak situation where the rules are less clear, when you're in a team setting where you have to get stuff done and there's time pressure and you're busy having a conversation or talking, that's your dominant response. Maybe you're doing it because you feel a little nervous, you don't know everybody and you want them to like you, and so you're talking a lot. But that's actually less adaptive and harming the group's ability to get stuff done, especially under time pressure. So the idea is to be aware of when your dominant responses are appropriate for the tasks and when they're inappropriate, and to be aware that you have them overall, and then to develop strategies about what you're going to do to help keep yourself from the talking problem. And as you continue in the course, you're going to be considering how to use these strategies in your learning teams, and you're going to write about them in your learning and leadership journals. Because every single one of you will have a different constellation of dominant responses. You might be an agreeable extrovert or a conscientious agreeable extrovert. So your dominant response might be slightly different. There might be different situations that really are maladaptive for you. I'm not going to give you strategies to use. Instead, I'm going to hope that you come up with some strategies, include them in your leadership journals or in your learning journals, so that you can keep them in mind and be aware next time you're in a situation where you're less likely to succeed, so that you can control the situation, turn it around for yourself, and behave in a way that really helps the group or helps yourself succeed. The second piece that we talked about with regards to personality was what personality looks like in a group. It looks a lot different than it does when it's just you, right? And the reason why is because you can have variance in a personality. You can have differences from a mean and also a mean. So a group has just these different kind of properties an individual doesn't have. And so what we found and what you identified in your exercise was that a group mean on any given personality dimension, let's take extroversion again, can be high, it can be moderate, or it can be low. But that's not the only piece of information that mattered. What you found out was that you can have a difference from the mean, right? You can have a lot of variance around the mean, that's high, or you can have very little variance around the mean, so everybody is agreeing, versus people are not in agreement with one another, or they don't have the same personality. So what does this mean? Well, it depends upon your profile. And what I've done here is outline what happens when, for example, in extroversion, you have a high level of extroversion, but a high level of difference from the mean. What it means is you're probably going to have one person who's an outlier in the group. There's a statistical reason for this. When means are high, and yet variance is high, especially on these scales, which have a ceiling. You can't go above a certain number on these scales. It usually means there's one person that's shifting the variance score. What that means is that person's different from everybody else. And that means that you have a potential to have conflict with this one member, as opposed to thinking of them as having a valued but different opinion. So knowing that is really important. So this kind of profile personality is something that's important to know with regards to a specific kind of personality. The same can be true also of this a low group mean but high variance. The same kind of situation applies. You could also have a moderate group mean with high variance. What does this mean? It means you're more likely to have some balance. But it also means you have a higher potential for conflict and potentially subgroups. And I'll show you an example so you get a better sense of what this means. One solution that I've seen work is to frame conflict as healthy debate. So instead of saying the word, we're having conflict, simply say, oh, I just want to debate with you. I just want to exchange ideas. Turns out that that framing really matters and can help people depersonalize what could otherwise be seen as conflict. Now, you might be in a group where you have a very high level of extroversion, but everybody is the same. It's a bunch of extroverts. What does this mean? It means that extroversion is this group's dominant response. So when this group gets stressed, everybody's going to behave the way an extrovert would behave. And that also means that groups will excel at tasks that require this response to succeed. So if you're all extroverts and you're engaged in a task, let's imagine all of you are independently engaged in selling, and let's imagine you have all moderate level of extroversion. You're all going to exceed at that because selling's a nice match to being an extrovert. Selling, that is, products. But you're also going to have challenges that you'll overuse this tendency to be extroverted for tasks where it's less appropriate, where you need to hunker down, stop talking, and get stuff done. So the solution is to structure early to guide group efforts away from your dominant response. In the case of extroverts, you might want to use an agenda, for example, so the talking problem doesn't get out of control. The same is true when you have a low group meeting, low extroversion, so introversion, where you have a lot of people agreeing. So that group's dominant response will be introversion. You'll excel at tasks that require this response, might do less well at tasks that aren't well suited to this kind of response. So you should structure early to guide efforts. Now, something to note, some of you said, I didn't get anything from this exercise. I had a mean average personality and everybody kind of had the average. What this means is you don't have to pay attention to that type of personality characteristic because it's not your dominant response. So don't spend time on it. That's what that means. So let me show you an example to take you through this, just to make this more concrete for you. Here's a team, a hypothetical team. Here you see on conscientiousness, they're all right on the average, but they have a high standard deviation, see? And what that means is there's a high potential for subgroups, see? These folks, low on conscientious, is my band together against these folks who are like, these low conscientious people are awful. They don't come to meetings on time, whatever, right? So there is the potential for conflict. And you can see this already, the seeds for this in the team. So what might you want to do? You might want to structure tasks and also frame disagreements as a healthy debate, right? Here's a situation on agreeableness where you have a high standard deviation but also a high mean. See? High mean here, but also high standard deviation. And that's because in a group of 5, one person can pull down the mean really makes a difference, right? Because you only have 5 people. If you had 30 people, this person might not make such a difference in the overall standard deviation. And this person is more likely to be the disagreeable, annoying person that all the highly agreeable people don't like. So this is a real opportunity for team conflict as well, and you can reframe this, categorize this person as having a valuable opinion, and remember that this person is just different than everybody else, and that difference isn't good or bad. Actually, it's quite valuable, because this group might have problems with being highly agreeable. Like this group is going to be all being high in neuroticism. This is a group that has a low standard deviation, but a high average neuroticism. This group is going to complain. Doesn't matter what the task, it's not going to like it. It's not going to like any task, it's going to find something negative. It's very difficult for high neurotic people to see the positive, especially when you don't have high positive affect people or low neurotic people to frame conversations or set the tone in a positive way early on. So one thing you might need is to structure your decision making or structure your tasks to say, let's talk about one positive thing about this assignment before we begin. Because otherwise this group will just talk about how much they hate the project. And in my experience, doing that diminishes performance. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that doing that is bad for performance. And here you have openness. So openness, everybody's the same in average. So I would say in this case, it's not really the dominant response. The potential for conflict is low. You're not going to see subgroups. Move on. This is not an interesting dimension for you guys. And here you have extroversion where everybody's different. Now, while this is a high standard deviation and an average level of extroversion, right? So what this means is you're not going to see subgroups form, probably not, because you don't have people clustering. But you might have conflict because you do have a lot of diversity. So knowing that ahead of time helps you understand the kind of challenge that you face in your groups. Now, another thing that I've done in this take home is I wanted to document the pros and cons of each kind of trait of the big 5 at least. And so as you scroll through these, you can download these PowerPoint slides and read through them. I won't go through them here. You can see situations that this particular trait are well suited to handle. So high openness is well suited to handle tasks that require creativity, interacting with different cultures because they're quite open, adaptable to change. And low in openness, they prefer formality, repetitive work, following guidelines, rules and structure, and so on. And in terms of openness, challenging situations involve for high openness people routine work. And for low openness people, considering lots of ideas and lack of structure. So that's a way to interpret all these slides. And there's several of them. And you can go through them at your leisure and see if that helps you when you're writing your journals, when you're doing your group contract exercise or other exercises in the course. Thanks, class, and I'll see you in class.